What up, Titans? Let's do a little APUSH review. Unit 3. 1754 to 1800, alright? Get your notes out if you want to. Let's begin this show, okay? So, just to kind of give us a little context here. 1754, what takes place? The 7 Years' War, aka French and Indian War. Yeah, okay. What's this war and conflict all about? It's basically the British and the French fighting over basically what has been claimed as territory in North America. Why is the name Indian in this title? Basically, the French, as you know from our colonization unit, they had a much better relationship with Native Americans. And they had relations and such that they were able to work with natives in this conflict and establish themselves in what is now today Canada, and basically lay claim to some of that territory. But actually, there is a land exchange here, and we don't need to know so much about that. All right. But the British, through this conflict, are able to basically establish themselves, and the French lose a lot of the territory north of the eastern seaboard we know today. But that's not as important as what are the outcomes of this conflict, all right? So the big outcomes here. There's two big pieces here that are in your homework: Pontiac's Rebellion and the Proclamation Line of 1763. All right, Pontiac's Rebellion, this starts to take place in 1763. Different Native American tribes in the Great Lakes region, they are not happy with British policies and military expansion. I'm talking about basically forts and military going westward, going out to the Midwest, going out to the Great Lakes region, and starting to establish themselves. And there are a lot of land speculator colonists who want to go west, but there's an issue with this. All right, and this leads to the Proclamation Line of 1763. If you want to go to a little map action, oh, here we go. We got some map action here. Here's your line. Now, it's not like people sat there and back at this time said, oh, here's the line. And it's not like there was thousands of troops patrolling this. But this was basically a declaration to the colonists saying, hey, British rule will not let you to expand westward. All right, this is Indian reserve land. This is territory that has now been gained by the British. But slowly there will be colonization, but for the time being, in 1763, we do not want colonists to go west. But there are a lot of people, squatters, settlers, people that want to go west. And going out west, you are not going to be protected by British authorities and British rule. All right? So these two ideas here, basically, why do we want to know this? This is post-French and Indian War. The British have land, and in some ways, this agitates the colonists. All right? It's the British controlling them and telling them, hey, you can't do this. We control you, though you don't have a lot of influence and power in Parliament in London. Okay? Moving on, 2 years later, we've got the Stamp Act, 1765. And as you all know, the war between the French and the Indians, the French and Indian War, the British had to spend quite a bit of money to finance this. Well, where are they going to get the money for this? Well, let's just tax the colonists. And this is when you start to see things like this issue of no taxation without representation, that kind of line that was rattled off by a lot of colonists at the time. And what are they taxing? All printed items. You got a diploma, court documents, land titles, contracts, newspapers, anything. That's what the Stamp Act is doing. And this is a series of taxes that you're going to start to see that start to really agitate the colonists and make them question what kind of power dynamic is there between the British and these colonists. They are subjects of the throne, all right. And it's they're on some ways they have an allegiance to the throne. That's their identity. That's how they see themselves. But they're going to start to question these things. All right. We're going to skip ahead a bit, about 9 years. Oh, little typo there. And the Intolerable Acts. What precedes these intolerable or coercive acts? This is the Boston Tea Party, and this is a response to the Boston Tea Party. I'm kind of moving fast here, but I just want to give you some main ideas that you could take some notes on. And if you're given a DBQ question that looks at the revolutionary time period, you could look at some of the things and you could identify some of the things that said, hey, this is what colonists were upset with. All right, so post-Boston Tea Party, the British authorities, they impose closing of the port of Boston. Now people have to quarter soldiers. They are now prohibiting town meetings and governmental action by colonists. And now any crimes that are committed, you will be tried. If they're high offenses, you'll be tried in Britain. You'll be taken to Britain and tried there. Also in the terms you need to know, Abigail Adams, wife of John Adams. During this time period, there are a lot of questions about what is this new time period going to look like? What kind of rights are individuals going to have? And probably the most famous line is, "Don't forget the ladies," in the letter exchange between John and Abigail. And this whole idea is something that we read. It's interesting because it looks at, how far were women's rights being expanded at this time. Back to our map there's our 13 colonies preceding the actual war itself, 1775. All right. Here's a little mnemonic device if you want to get more into the nuts and bolts of what took place prior to the Revolutionary War itself. All right. You could do that on your own, take some notes on that if there is a DBQ question on the Revolutionary War. About 3 years ago, there was a DBQ on the Revolutionary War. I don't think there will be one on the Revolutionary War, but we do need to be prepared for this. All right. So if we're going through this time period, the Revolutionary War is taking on ideas from the Enlightenment. All right. One person that we studied this year that you should probably know his name because it influences Thomas Jefferson tremendously is John Locke. All right. John Locke. He's a huge political thinker, and he wrote this thing called he wrote 2 treatises on government, and we read a tract from it, and he basically has this idea in here called natural laws. What rights are people given just by virtue of being human? If you're a human being, should you have a certain set of rights? And also, sovereignty resides with the people, not the state. All right, I'll go into those ideas in a little bit. We read the second treatise by John Locke, and we looked at some of these ideas, and I'll talk about this a little bit more when we look at Thomas Jefferson. All right, what document did it highly influence? The Declaration of Independence. The language from John Locke, these Enlightenment ideas of natural rights. All human beings should be born with life, liberty, and the idea to own property, what we know today as pursuit of happiness, is written into the Declaration of Independence. These are some of our most cherished and coveted values. Abraham Lincoln and MLK also talked about ideas from the Declaration of Independence. I bet many of you could quote this: "All men are created equal, and they are endowed by their Creator with certain rights such as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Yes, this is something you hear over and over again. Comes from our Declaration of Independence, but a lot of those ideas originated from the Enlightenment, from other thinkers. Okay? Now, who put that into writing, the Declaration of Independence? Thomas Jefferson. There he is, TJ, right there. Right? Thomas Jefferson was asked by the Continental Congress to write a Declaration of Independence. All right? That was his big job. He was helped by Adams and Franklin. They helped with revisions and things like that. Jefferson was seen as the most eloquent writer of the time. All right? And what it says is very radical. And I'll get into some of the major themes in just a second. Goes to press on 4th of July, 1776. We celebrate this as our national holiday. They voted on it on July 2nd. So there's debate about, well, what should our real day be for celebrating independence? And actually, everybody didn't sign it until August. So there's debate over that, but that's not important. The bigger idea is, what are some of the things that are written here? What are some of the concepts? And this is what you need to know. We say, what are some of these concepts? First off, and this comes from John Locke and other Enlightenment thinkers. This is known as the Enlightenment time because we're talking about natural rights. Rulers shouldn't just have absolute power and authority. Human beings should have some type of rights just by being human. Now, some of you might say, that's crazy, because what about slavery? What about issues with women? Yes, all of that other stuff exists. But let's go over some of these ideas as they're starting to take seed in this time period. There's an idea of a social contract. I give up some of my absolute freedom and liberty by getting protection from the state or whoever the ruler is. That's the idea of a social. There's an agreement between the ruler and those who are being ruled. And if the ruler is not living up to that contract, then people have a right to revolt. All right? And rule, whoever is the ruler of a country, they get the right to rule by the popular people. All right? The sovereignty. Sovereignty is given to the ruler by the people. All right? So sovereignty is basically who has rule and authority, and it's here the people have rule and authority. In America, in our democracy today, people have the right to elect who they want. So that person is appointed by the power of the people. And I've talked about this before, the idea of natural rights. By being a human being, you are endowed by your Creator with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Pursuit of happiness, what does that mean? It's debatable. It's a whole melange of things. But in 1776, this comes out, and the Declaration of Independence is seen as a major expression of what is going on in America at this time, in these colonies. All right? A couple other terms you might want to know. Shays Rebellion. If we move past the Declaration of Independence, sorry, we didn't get our war on. I know some of you like war. You're probably very happy to have that World War II piece about a couple weeks ago so you could get into World War II and understand it a little bit more. But we're going to skip the American Revolution. We win the Revolution, and we've got problems. The Articles of Confederation stink tremendously. And in 1786, in the winter, into early 1787, there is a revolt by farmers in Massachusetts because taxes have increased fivefold. All right, there's a little typo there. Taxes have increased fivefold. And a lot of these farmers, they're not going to be able to pay their debts. They're not going to be able to pay the deeds. They're not going to be able to pay their mortgages and things like this. So a lot of them start to take over courts and say, this is preposterous. You can't just up these taxes on us, all right? Because the American Republic, this new Articles of Confederation, we're a very weak, poor nation. We need to basically pay for the expenses of war. How's this going to happen? All right? And Shays and some of these people who were part of this rebellion also served in the Revolution. They're like, wait a second. The merchant class, they're putting these taxes on us. They're doing fine. What about us? So, one of the questions in the Shays Rebellion is who's replaced our British oppressors? We have a new form of oppression. All right? And they took over courthouses throughout New England states. And another issue is every state's supposed to have its own militia. There's no central authority. And that's one of the issues with the Articles of Confederation. All right? And let's just look at this briefly. We'll take about 2 minutes to do this. Federalism, as you know, the idea of federalism, there is a central authority, and then there are separate powers. Those separate authorities are states today. But in the Articles, it was a firm league of just friendship. All right, now in the Constitution, we have a stronger, more centralized government. And that was a debate between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists at that time. All right, in the Articles, who has power? The states have power. Under our federal system, power is shared. And you're seeing this debate right now with the coronavirus. Trump is saying, hey, I've got total authority. And governors are like, no, we're in charge of our state right now, okay? We are the ones who need to oversee our state and how we're doing. Representation of states, it's equal. Every state gets a vote. In the Constitution, remember, it's proportional in the House. It's equal in the Senate. You get 2 senators. Taxation, only states can tax. Ooh, how about that? Wouldn't that be nice? Get rid of our federal taxes. The Constitution, state, and the federal government can tax. Here were the powers of Congress. Let's add to it because we got an issue here under the Articles of Confederation. The federal government can't tax. They don't regulate interstate commerce or trade. There's every colony has its own currency. What the heck? You're going to go to New Jersey today? You need some New Jersey shillings? Whatever. Who's going to crush the rebellion when it sprouts up? All right, in the Articles, to pass any bill, you need 2/3. What? Why not just a simple majority like in the Senate and the House, and then it goes to the president? Amendments, to get any amendment passed, you need a unanimous. All 13 of those states need to agree. Oh my gosh, that was tough. But here with the amendment to the U.S. Constitution, it's 2/3 of Congress, and then you need 3/4 of the states. All right, just a little brief primer on some of the things it was lacking. Whiskey Rebellion. Sorry, I did not talk about this much. This comes into effect in the early 1790s. Alexander Hamilton is working under George Washington. He's one of his closest confidants. And there is an excise tax put on whiskey throughout the country. And some of these distilleries out in Pennsylvania, out in some of these remote parts of the country, they don't want to pay their taxes, right? And this is a first contest for the new federal government. What are they going to do? They're going to let these guys just snub the law? They're going to let them be scofflaws? No, I don't think so. Not going to happen. And guess who wants to take the helm of this army? Alexander Hamilton. He does. He goes out west into Pennsylvania, starts shutting down these distilleries that aren't paying their taxes. All right? But this was a rabble of people out west, out in the Appalachian area, who did not want to listen to the federal government. And this was a sign that, hey, look, the federal government is the authority. They are the sovereign. We are the citizens, male whites who had land, were voting for these people. But there was this idea of the rule of law.